Hey guys, and welcome to a retake of Team America Rocketry Challenge goes KerbalEdu. We had some slight problems last time with, first of all, my voice, but also the recording, so we're trying to do a retake with less audience interaction this time for the TARC archives to be viewed at a later date. So my name is Uusi-Mäkelä. I'm from Teacher Gaming Finland. We are a small independent game company who make educational versions of popular entertainment games, such as Minecraft and this time Kerbal Space Program. And the result of that is KerbalEdu, a school version of Kerbal Space Program. And today in this webinar we're going to talk about Kerbal Space Program, KerbalEdu, Team America Rocketry Challenge, and how Kerbal Space Program and KerbalEdu can be applied to inspire and prepare for the actual Rocketry Challenge. If you are not familiar with Team America Rocketry Challenge, you should definitely check out the website at rocketcontest.org. I'm going to show the address here on the screen, and there are some others here as well, but you should definitely visit the site for Rocketry Challenge to get your bearings first. Right, so what is Kerbal Space Program? If you have not played Kerbal Space Program, a free demo is available. I'm going to type in the address here since I didn't have it yet. Kerbal Space Program free demo is available online at kerbalspaceprogram.com. And take a look. Kerbal Space Program is made by the wonderful Mexican studio called Squad, and we've been happy to collaborate with them to create KerbalEdu. Right, so what is Kerbal Space Program? If you never played the game, let's take a quick look at what it looks like. I'm here in the game already. I was doing some pre-settings for us. And first of all, these guys are Kerbals. So when we talk about Kerbal Space Programs, it's a race of these green little aliens. Very cute and very hapless. They don't usually know what they're doing, but they are really ambitious about getting to space. This guy already landed on the moon, but let's take a step back and let's see how that works. And this time it is KerbalEdu we're playing, so there are some additional features that you might not find in the demo version that I had your link to. So when we start the game, we have a couple of options. We can go and do some training modules that I really suggest you do if you've never played the game before. There are some construction basics, flight basics, science basics, orbiting and actually reaching the moon and capturing asteroids. These missions are made with NASA, so you should definitely check them out. They're really good fun. There are also some scenarios you can play, some of the EDU stuff we have made, but also different kinds of missions. You can download these from the internet as well. But today we're going to be playing a new game. I'm going to start a new game, and you have some options here. You give my player name, and I'm going to choose to play in the career mode. Career mode lets you manage all aspects of your space program, and it starts from basics, so you only have a limited number of parts to choose from when you start building your first vessels. Whereas in sandbox mode it might be a bit overwhelming at first if you have all hundreds and hundreds of parts to play with. So let's start with the career mode, and you can up here you have flag. You can choose your flag if you actually land somewhere, and you can plan it there. So let's go with Teacher Gaming. I'm gonna be patriotic and I'm gonna play with Teacher Gaming flag. You can create your own flags if you wish. Now when I start the game, the first thing we are going to see, here we are greeted here in the Space Center by Gene German Kerman, who's the flight director here at Kerbal Space Center. And he's going to give you some tips if you never played the game, and he's going to tell you to go and play the training if you didn't. Righto, thanks, I've got it. Thank you, Kerman. And let's head over to the tall building in the middle. this is the this is where we assemble our rockets. It's weekly assembly building, and we get some more tutorials here. I'm gonna skip them today, and alright, let's hide the window here. I'm gonna come back to it in a minute. When we start building a rocket, you have different sets of parts here. We have pods that where your crew goes to. We have fuel tanks, engines, command and control, structural things, aerodynamics, utility, and science. Let's start with the command pods. That's the usual thing because we need a crew. I'm going to start with a command pod, and I'm going to get the fuel tank for us. And this works by dragging and dropping. When you first click here, you can just, it appears in your hand, and you can drag it here, and it's going to snap in place like this. Right. And then let's get an engine. You have different types of engines. You have solid fuel boosters, you have liquid fuel engines. You're gonna have a bunch of jet engines and different kinds of things when you progress in the game. And it is you get the scientific information as well. So you get the mass, you get drag, the crash tolerance, the temperature it can take, how much thrust you get out of it, and you have cost and the bottom as well. And if you right click, you're gonna get some extra information: what kind of propellants, how much they consume per second, how much electrical charge they're gonna generate, etc. So anyway, let's get a liquid fuel engine to get us off the ground, and let's go find a parachute for us. Parachute is something I usually forget when playing the game for the first time. Up here you can give your craft a name. I'm gonna call this one TARC Demo Vessel, and you can save them and you can export them to other players, or just build up a library of your own vessels here. And up here you, oh sorry, my webcam is blocking stuff here. Let's get me, I'm gonna switch me to another place. Here we are. Up here we have a green button that says launch. I'm going to launch the vessel. It takes a while, we're loading. Here we are. Or no, here we are. It's a meager vessel, but you're going to build bigger and bigger as we progress in the game. And down here we have Jebediah Kerman, who's going to be our pilot today. He looks content so far. Important stuff we have here on the left side of the screen is our staging. Staging is the order of execution for different actions in our rocket. Right now we only have two. The icons here, they're going to highlight in the picture when you hover your mouse. So this one, it says that in the same stage we are going to execute our parachute and our engine. If I do that, both of them will activate at the same time, and that's not optimal. I don't want my parachute open when I throttle full speed up. So I'm gonna drag this one down here. You can press the plus key to create more stages if you wish, and it starts from the bottom and goes up. So first engines, next time parachutes, and every time you hit space, it's going to activate the next stage. And in the middle here, you have a nav ball that tells you your heading, your speed, G-forces, but the throttle meter here, that's the important part for us right now. With Control key at the bottom left of your keyboard and Shift above it, you can change the throttle. And we're going to come back to this in a minute in an example of how to use the game in the classroom. First of all, let's go max throttle and let's hit space and see what happens. And up it goes. And as you can see up here, though we're going up, we're at 1 kilometer already. We're going at about 250 meters per second. As you can see, it's starting to tilt to the right a bit, and now we have to try and keep it balanced. And to keep it balanced, we use W, A, S, and D keys on your keyboard. So left hand on the left side of your keyboard on W, A, S, and D. And if you press D, it's going to tilt right. pressing A, it's going to tilt left. Pressing W, it's going to tilt the nose forward. Pressing S is going to bring it back. Yeah, you see. And with Q and E, you can make it roll as well. Q left and E to the right. And as you can see, we ran out of fuel. We are still up at 15 kilometers, but we ran out of fuel, and now we're starting to descend. Yeah, right about now. And we're starting to fall. And as we're falling down, when we feel like it, we can activate the parachute. And it's going to take a while to get down, so I'm going to accelerate the time a bit. Fast forward. You can do this dot and comma. Dot, say full stop and comma on the right side of your keyboard. And it's falling. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to wait until we're at 2 kilometers, and then I'm going to deploy our parachute. And I'm going to warp time back. Here we go, and that's our parachute deployed. It's not going to pop open until around 500 meters. Go fast forward a bit, and there we go. And now we're descending at, say, 10 meters per second. That's still quite fast, so you might want to have additional parachutes or some fuel to some fuel to safely land you. And actually, probably at 10 meters per second, our engine is going to blow. You could check out in the weekly assembly building what kind of crash tolerance it has, and I think we're around 3 meters per second for our fuel engine, so most probably it's going to blow up in just a couple of seconds. Let's see how it goes. And we have landing. The Eagle has landed, and there we can see our space center, so it wasn't really magnificent flight. In any case, this was a very basic flight, and up here when we finish we can recover our vessel. And when we recovered our vessel, we see that we earned some science points. We can recover our parts, and our crew made it, and he gained some experience. And some of the resources, obviously you can use the funds up here to build your rockets, and among other things you can upgrade your space center to make it big and mighty. But the science points is an interesting one. Down here you have a science and research and development division. It's not very big yet, but if you click here you can see beginning of a tech tree, and you can purchase different things here for your science points you earn during a mission. And first thing you can purchase is basic rocketry. It says how hard can rocket science be anyway, and you're going to earn 4 parts. You can see some details here as well. And I'm going to purchase this one, and it opens up some more options for us, and it's going to spread out to be a bit really big and complex. And next time we have survivability, different kinds of parachutes, lander legs, smaller engines, or stability when we get some wings, decouplers, or general rocketry that gives you first big solid fuel boosters. Right, but let's head back to our weekly assembly building. Now that we purchased more parts, we should see them here. We got some different kind of fuel tanks, no new engines. We got a decoupler that lets you drop the spare parts when you run out of fuel with your tank. You can drop those, and some science things where you have mystery goo containment unit that lets you study how mystery goo behaves in different environments. So that's the basics. That's how you progress. You unlock new parts, earning the science points. I'm gonna check the mission control here. The very small building right now, but you're gonna have Gene here, your director. He's gonna give you some missions from different companies. You see, some of them are really simple, like escape the atmosphere, set the altitude record, and you can see that you earn some funds, you earn some reputation, you might earn some science as well. But some of them are for companies to test parachutes, test the fuel boosters. You get some conditions you need to meet, and this can be a really handy way to get to know the game. And for educational purposes, it actually makes the students have to think if they only have limited funds or limited time to complete the mission, what's the best way to perform something? Is it just strapping on as many boosters as you can and getting up there, or how do you complete the missions? It forces you to think, and instead of just going out and trying it 100 times and seeing, okay, the 99th time worked. It actually forces you to analyze stuff and not just going at them at random. Righto. One more thing we have here is Spaceplane Hangar that lets you build planes. Right now we don't have many parts for building them, but here you can assemble horizontal vessels, usually planes. And planes is a different type of gameplay here. Use the same controls, but obviously it's a bit different when you're controlling them horizontally. I'm not going to go into too much detail here with them. Next up, that was basic Kerbal Space Program, but I'm going to dip into some of the EDU features we added. We are trying to maintain the game. We're trying to maintain the spirit of the game and trying to make it as fun as possible, while still, retaining or bringing in some educational values. Squad, the original creators of the game, actually had a survey out to their players last year, asking them how many of them actually learned new things about physics or space flight or aerodynamics with the game, and the whopping 96% of the players actually responded that this game actually got them interested in STEM subjects: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it really got them going, and going to Wikipedia and finding how drag or lift works, how orbiting really works, because that physics model in the game is really good. So if you know how stuff works here, you're gonna have a good guess how it works in the real life as well. Obviously some of the things are a bit off, but it gives you a really good idea. And we wanted to enhance those things with the EDU features. First thing we have here is Design Helper. I closed it the first time we were building a vessel, but this one helps you to build your vessel for the first time. Right now it says that you have one error in your small error in your rocket. It doesn't have any parts, so let's remedy that. And I'm going to drag a command pod here. Right now it has parts, but some new problems came up. The first stage thrust is 0, so we don't have any engines in our stage. We don't even have a stage. There is crew, but there is no parachute, valid point, and there are no stability enhancers for your launch. So if I were to build a hulking big vessel for the launch, we would need some stability enhancers. But there are two different categories here. We have warnings and then we have errors. Errors are going to prevent your flight. Yellow things, the warnings, are just going to make things a bit difficult. Alright, let's add in the fuel tank from here, and let's go with a basic liquid fuel engine. And now it's kind of happy, no errors. This will fly. But let's add in I'm gonna add in a decoupler here, since we didn't have one last time. So we can actually go a bit higher, and then another fuel engine. Yep. So we have a bit more complicated flight this time. And let's make the Design Helper happy and go with the parachute as well. You can analyze the resource flow in your vessel. Doesn't have much right now, but if I click on collapse all, if I click on the tiny things here, it's gonna tell you what parts I have and what kind of charges they hold. Let's close this one. So this one here is a fuel tank, and it says it has 180 units of liquid fuel and oxidizer. Obviously we're going to need oxidizer when we get out of atmosphere. And below it we have a fuel engine. We have a fuel engine that generates electrical charge. The green one tells that it's producing something, blue one tells it's storing it, and yellow one here tells it's consuming things. So the engine is consuming minus 6.05 liquid fuel and minus 7.39 oxidizer. So it's going to use up things here from the fuel tank. And if I click on the resource flow, it's going to show us the arrows here are going to tell where the green one, when the liquid fuel engine generates electric charge, is flowing from up here and it is going to the command pod. So the command pod is actually storing some electric charge and consuming it. And here yellow arrow goes from the fuel tank and tells us that the engine is going to be using up the liquid fuel and some oxidizer as well. So it's a good way to see how the resources flow, so you're not just popping things at random. Let's close that one. You're also going to have design data for you. If I'm going to see my vehicle here, you're going to see the mass, dry mass without the fuel, weight, thrust to weight ratio, delta V, different kinds of things here. And this can be a bit overwhelming, but you can pre-select what kind of things you want to display. You can go with mass, you can go with weight, you can go, let's skip weight, but you can go with thrust, for example, and thrust to weight ratio if you want to talk about that kind of stuff. And you can go to design data and see those afterwards, so you don't have to go and see all of the data at once. Right, so let's head to the flight next. I'm gonna go to the launch again, and this time I'm gonna pop open our flight recorder. So it's kind of a black box we have. Up here we have an EDU button that lets you switch on and off the EDU features we have. So they don't have to be persistent, they don't have to be there limiting your view if you don't want to. First thing first, flight recorder. I'm gonna launch our vessel in the background. And if we're using a flight recorder here, we can track different things like altitude, or your speed, or your mass, different kinds of things, g-forces, internal energy. Let's go with speed and altitude. If you can change the interval at which we're recording here. If I now start our engines, here we go, both our altitude and speed are climbing, and they are being recorded every 5 seconds. I'm gonna reduce the interval to 3 seconds so we can actually see them progress. And we actually already ran out of fuel with our first engine, so our speed went up and then down, and now it's climbing again, as is our altitude. And you can change what you are tracking in the program as well. I'm going to drop our speed, and let's see how our mass is developing. So we dropped some stuff, so it went drastically down here. It's going down as we lose the fuel, different things, potential energy, kinetic energy, and this is a good way of, for example, comparing the potential and kinetic energy, how they behave in on a rocket launch. And let's see how our flight is doing. We ran out of fuel. We are up here almost out of atmosphere at 25,000 meters, and you can see different things tracked here as well. So we have liftoff, separation of states 3 confirmed, and you can add in your own events here. So this, I can hear that this was the peak altitude. Oh, sorry, caps lock. Peak altitude. And I'm going to add that here. So now we can track your own events as well, and you can display them here as well in the mission, log. And I'm going to accelerate the speed, so we're going to actually fall in a minute. And at the end of the flight, you can click on the export button, and you can export your flight reports. You can have them in the CSV form, so you can actually open them in Excel if you want to if you want to process data further. You can just have a PNG that gives you a picture of the graphic here, of the graph here, or you can have a PDF, basically the same thing but with a little more detail. Let's deploy our parachute up here in the background. Yep. And we're landing in C this time, and you can save them and work with them later on at a later date. So it's great for exercises where you're asking your students to monitor something in the game, but then you want them to wanted to give you, explanations, descriptions of how, or explanations about what was the physics in the background, how did they how did this come about, and have to make some interpretation of the data as well. Next things we have in the EDE version of the game, we have some visualization tools. I'm gonna change the game mode into the sandbox. So I'm gonna show you some of the science features. Here we are. Sandbox mode, yeah. And let's start the game. Oh, hello there, Gene again. As you can see, our space center has grown quite a bit since we started. I'm going to head to the space plane hangar this time, and let's build. Or I'm going to load. I'm going to load a vessel for us. Raven spears are good. Here we are. And I'm going to add in some of the EDU features we have. I'm going to skip the design helper since we already covered that last time, but I'm going to add force indicators here on the top. I'm going to add energy spheres, and last but not least the function tool as well. Function tool is something we're actually can do here. Function tool, you can create your custom functions that you can display in the flight recorder we saw previously. So if you want your students to get to know a phenomenon, or if you describe it in the class, and if you actually know how to make the function, you can actually make the function here yourself and see how it behaves. So if I wanted to just basically see how speed works, I'm going to start with our position and delta position on surface, and I'm going to divide that by time. Here we are, how meters per second works, and you can display this. Yep, surface distance divided by delta time. Yep, and I could display this now in our function tool, or in the flight recorder we saw previously. And you could do the same thing with mass. You can do it with force, different things. The gravity, you can make constants, different kind of operators here. All right, let's head over to the launch this time. And for example, for the Team America Rocketry challenge that many of you are taking part in, is alright, let's turn these down for a minute. The gravity and ground force is displayed here. These might be a really good fit for you. So they are projected above your plane here. So what kind of forces are acting on the vessel when you're actually testing a plane? What kind of forces act on it? So now as I activate the engine, the thrust is growing steadily, and the ground forces are actually pointing a bit backwards. And if I'm starting our ascent, its gathering cell speed should be around 160 or 70 when we're actually getting a lift off. Here we go. Yeah. And we have taken air, and now as you can see, we lost the ground forces, but now we have the aerodynamic forces pointing backwards. So we have drag here and lift, though they're not yet separated in the Kerbal Space program, but they might be in a later date when the squad updates the game. And next thing we have, besides force indicators, is energy spheres that lets you monitor your potential energy and your kinetic energy, and you can change the reference frame. Is it your launch altitude, where you started from? Is it surface? This time they are the same, but you could start from different places. Is it your periapsis of your orbit, if you were orbiting, or excuse me. You have different frames of reference for your energy spheres. And now we created the custom function here. We could modify it further, but yeah, check function, and let's see how that works in our flight recorder. We can now see my function number 1 here, and I'm gonna actually check it against our surface speed. If I made the function correctly here, they should be identical, which they are. It's perfect. Yep. And let's close our flight recorder, and let's see how our force indicator is holding up. And as you can see, if I maneuver, the force indicators change accordingly. If I kill our engines, the thrust dies down very quickly. Yeah. So they are updated in real time. Here we are, there's a small island, I'm going to head towards it. And as you can see, steering a plane can be a bit of a hassle. They don't turn as instantaneously as we did with the rockets. And this time we are using jet fuel engines. And these ones actually require air intake in some places. Building space planes is not as easy as rockets usually, so it's usually best to start with rockets. Excuse me. But some of the first ideas people usually start with the game is just basic scientific thinking. So if we are talking about, I'm going to post the game here. If we are thinking about how to implement the game in your classroom, one of the best ways, we have two approaches to implementing this in the classroom. There is the basic physics lab approach that goes directly to the force arrows, playing with the arrows and or visualizing things, using the game as a physics lab. And it's a really good approach to the game, and it's an kind of extension of your basic physics lab. You learn about phenomena in your physics class, and then you can come to the game and see how those things work. Well, not in real life, but how they work when you actually get to play around with them yourself. The other approach is about teaching the scientific kind of thinking, or getting the students excited. So two approaches: using game as inspiration, as a kind of introduction to a phenomenon, and then going it in depth in your physics class, or the other way around, where you actually get to know the phenomenon in the physics class and then going about how that would work in Kerbal Space Program. And as you progress, the latter approach, where you learn about the physics concepts in your classroom and then apply them in Kerbal Space Program, that's going to get more and more exciting, as the students already know that these things work in Kerbal, but now I just have to find out how they work here. And it's going to get into a beautiful cycle of experimentation, because you already know that you can check the forces, you have the flight recorder, and you can actually check how things work here. And as you progress, you can create your own custom functions as well. The other way around, when you're talking about the inspiration, the important thing is to let the students know that there's a difference between playing the game at home and playing it at school. And the difference is that back in home, usually you have all the spare time in the world, and you can just go about trying how things work. So through trial and error, repeating that stuff for hundreds of times, and then maybe getting it right at random. But the kind of thinking we want to promote with Kerbal and other games is that you can actually go about thinking about these things in a scientific way. You can start with experimenting in a rational manner. How do you test this feasibly so it doesn't take hundreds of times? You might not want to change every bit of your rocket if something doesn't work. You have to eliminate what works, what doesn't, and then make the changes accordingly, not just at random. Alright, the rocket didn't work, let's start from the scratch everything and start from the beginning. Instead, you can just or this part didn't work. Let's change the engine and see if it works this time. Okay, it didn't work with different engines, so it probably isn't the engine. Maybe we have too little fuel, or maybe it's too heavy. The thrust weight ratio is off. That kind of thinking. And one of the first things people usually do is start by comparing simple engines. So if I double the size, let's head back to yep, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna head back to the rocket assembly in the weekly assembly building in the middle. So we have 3 different sizes basic liquid fuel tanks here, and here these 3: FLT 100, FLT 200, and FLT 400. And actually we have FLT 800 as well. It's a recent addition. So how does it work? Their masses, every time you go up, the mass doubles, the drag stays the same, and the amount of liquid fuel and oxidizer doubles as well. So how, for example, making hypotheses of how the amount of liquid fuel is gonna affect your flight. Are you going to double your altitude every time you have a bigger engine? Are you going to double your acceleration or your speed? And making the hypothesis accordingly. How is this going to affect my flight? And is bigger always better? Etc. And for the purposes, for example, of Team American Rocketry Challenge, left some miles from Team American Rocketry Challenge suggested we talk about impulses and see how throttle is going to affect, how changing your throttle is going to affect the altitude of your flight. So I've never taken part from Finland. I've never taken part in the Rocketry Challenge myself, but I hear that it's a common misconception that going at full throttle is going to get you to the highest altitude possible. So let's do a quick test run. I'm going to get a liquid fuel engine again and a tank, and let's get a parachute as well. From here I'm getting a bigger one, XL. No, that's an overkill. Let's go with the basic parachute and let's go to the launch. So is full throttle gonna get us out of the atmosphere? Or what's gonna happen if I strap on the biggest engine and max throttle and go and head up? Here we go. I'm just gonna tweak the staging here. So if I go at max throttle, let's see how high this climbs. It's going to take about 20 seconds when we climb. Shouldn't be too high. About 30 seconds. This time I think we're going to reach around 8,000 meters. Let's see. But as a lesson, you could start with thinking about activating the force arrows we saw earlier and see how forces act on the rocket. Seeing how thrust or gravity or the aerodynamic forces go, and actually paying attention to the amount of aerodynamic forces and see how those affect the altitude, and actually going to the concept of oh, sorry, excuse me, I'm just trying to get a sip. And going to the concept of how forces working over time is going to affect the altitude, how forces go over time add up to the impulse. So this one went up to around 14,000 meters, 14,650 meters. Alright, let's revert to launch. Here we go. And this time I'm gonna head up with half the throttle. And you can start the, I'm just gonna pop this one up. There we go, and change the staging. Right, let's leave him climbing. So your lessons could start with the discussion of how forces affect your vessel, and maybe just some on the students' part, some quick demonstration on there. They can just monitor, they can launch their rockets or planes and see how, when you're sent, how it's going to affect the altitude, what forces are working there, what forces are working. It's a good recap of how drag, gravity and thrust are going to build up to your force vector. Let's climbing, and then we would get the students to work with us with the same kind of experiment we're doing now. So so what's the optimum throttle? Obviously there is not just one throttling profile that's going to fit every rocket you ever build, but how it's going to affect the altitude. For example, this here, last time we ended up at 14,500 or 600 meters, but this time we are already closing in on 17,000 meters here, and we will end up around 18,000, 19,000, I don't know, yeah. But even at 50% throttle, we ended up climbing almost 5 kilometers higher than previously. So as students, you would hypothesize first about different test profiles for optimum throttle and how the throttle is going to affect the altitude you're going to climb to, and then you're going to test it in the game and obviously take notes of how high you are climbing, and doing this you can actually use the flight recorder here. It's going to track everything for you, so you don't have to keep things manual and actually write it yourself. You can just check what your peak altitude was here, and you can actually compare it to your mass or the consumption of fuel and see how they affect each other. Or here we go. Let's see, that was around 19,000 meters. And let's head back to the launch and test one more profile for us. So lower throttle was better. So if I go down to 30% and do the same thing again, is it gonna climb higher and higher again? Yeah, that seems about right. It doesn't seem to. Yeah, there we go. We have a left off. And obviously all of this is due to the drag. Drag is getting bigger and bigger as we're approaching terminal velocities, and that's the point we want to make. I don't have the force arrows here, dumb of me, but you could actually see, if you wanted to make them do the explanations, you would tell them to activate the force arrows and take note of how big your drag is getting. And obviously you can export all of the data from the flight recorder and work with that if you actually want them to make them demonstrate using the data you have, make them demonstrate and explain how or what's the basis for their sorry about this, what's the basis for their the results they get from the flight. Sorry about that. And this time we are already climbing. We're down to 30% of fuel. We are around 6,000 meters, and this time we are not probably going to make it all the way to out of the atmosphere to 25,000 meters. Let's see. I've just fast forwarded the time to skip some of the tedious bits. And that's actually, the skipping of the time is kind of a key point here when you're balancing. Now we only made to 18,000 meters. That was still higher than with the maximum thrust we had. And skipping the time, when I'm talking about that, it pops into my mind that this is actually a very crucial thing about balancing using games in the classroom. So when you play at home, you usually have, well, not unlimited amounts of time, but it's alright if you spend an hour or two playing a game on a night. But at school you obviously have only 45 minutes or 90 minutes to play for a class, and obviously you don't want to spend all your class playing a game. You might want to at some points, but it's not optimal if you spend all of your class inside a game just making one experiment. Explosions. Michael Bay is happy. But obviously you have to pace your gaming when you're talking about gaming in classroom, and knowing when to skip time, what kind of experiments you want to have. If I'm orbiting, it's not feasible to wait for 2 hours to get into a maneuver node. So skipping time, trying to pace it, is key with games, obviously. But then again, if we were talking about classroom play, you can tell if you are playing Kerbal Space Program at home. If you're tasking your students to play it at home, that's perfectly alright as well. Then you would have the time But if you're playing in the classroom, I would strongly consider pacing the class accordingly. And we are proponents, strongly support using more of a blended approach. So we are not advocating just skipping your physics class and playing the game and learning the concepts of physics internally, or without just learning them intrinsically, or learning them by playing and then trying to guess work. Well, this is physics, I guess. We hope that you can actually employ the game in the classroom as supplementing features. This is not just the game, but it's a great place to get excited about the things you learn in the classroom and then applying them elsewhere. Alright, one last thing for the Team America Rocketry Challenge. We have our wonderful developer Marco here, a teacher gaming who's the lead developer for KerbalEdu, actually made us, where are we? Electronic. Oh, damn it! No, where's our Recnick? Yeah, here we are. Oh, we are missing a feature. Damn, we have an egg part for you. Let me just switch windows. We have a, yeah, here we are. So we have we have created an egg. I know that in Team America Rocketry Challenge you have to launch an egg to a certain altitude and make sure it gets back intact. And Marco got excited about the challenge and created us an egg for Kerbal Space Program as well. And you can download the egg here at kerbaledu.com/TARC. Team America Rocketry Challenge, and it's available for free if you have Kerbal Space Program, and you can add it here and experiment. So you just add it to any vessel you have, but it's really fragile, so it doesn't have very high crash tolerance. But you can download it here. I'm going to type in the address in the PowerPoint. Just a minute. Here we are. I'm going to type in the address here. KerbalEdu egg part. Yep, kerbaledu.com/TARC, and you can download the egg for free if you wish for basic Kerbal Space Program or KerbalEdu. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter at KerbalEdu, and check out kerbaledu.com for other features. We have a mission library that hosts different kind of lessons and different kind of missions for KerbalEdu, and we are actually working on a bigger project called Earth History campaign that walks your students through the space race between the Soviets and US, going from the 50s to the early 70s, with Kerbals being the third silent party of the race. And it's going to explore some of the historical concepts and some historical planes, historical persons, and it's going to focus on doing research on the topics, and while covering some of the basic physics concepts. So stay tuned at kerbaledu.com for the Earth History campaign. Also, be sure to check the rocketcontest.org for Team America Rocketry Challenge and all the features, all the future webinars about the Rocketry Challenge, and also kerbalspaceprogram.com if you want to play the demo if you haven't played it yet. So kerbalspaceprogram.com for the demo as well. And thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you have any questions, I'm going to quickly change over to PowerPoint here as well. You can follow me on Twitter. My name is Uusi-Mäkelä. And you can follow me on Twitter, and my handle is, here we go, Miku87. So if you have any questions, you can tweet me, you can contact me through kerbaledu.com, and everything about the Team America Rocket Challenge, visit rocketcontest.org. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have fun, and Sorry, microphone died. I hope you had fun with me today, and I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you can bring KerbalEdu and get your students excited in your classroom about STEM subjects and space race. Thank you.